Welcome to Tri-Cities Community TV. I'm Cathy. Our guest today is Councillor Callan Morrison from the City of Port Moody. Welcome to the program, Callan. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Let's get right into it. You're a first-time councillor, but we're more than halfway through your term, of course. So tell us a little bit about what that was like for you when you ran for council and you were the highest vote getter this last time, and that was very, very impressive. You and I ran together some years ago. We weren't successful, but you're successful this time. So please share a little bit of that with me.
Oh, thank you. It's an absolute honor to be representing my community. And I'm very grateful to the voters of Port Moody for giving me the opportunity to do so. I did run in 2014 with you, and then took the next election off because I had opened up a small business at that time.
Yes.
And with 2022 rolling around, there was some needs I believe needed to be filled in the community as far as direction, voice, etc., and also collaboration and teamwork that needed to be provided on council. So I was thinking about a whole bunch of different people that could possibly do it, and I'm like, you know what? Why don't I do it myself?
Exactly.
So I've been very fortunate to work with a great team on council, and I'm looking forward to the next almost 2 years that are left.
How do you find, you're a young dad too. You guys recently had a baby. How old is she now?
26 months, so 2 years, 2 months.
You know, it's a new dad where they're talking about the months, okay, guys? Just saying. Well, she's 48 and a half months. That's 4, okay? Just say she's 4.5. So she's almost 2.
Just over 2.
Oh, over 2. Yes, sorry. Oh my gosh, I remember when she turned 1.
Yes, time
It seemed
flies.
like it was yesterday. And then you have the business, and then you also work full time, and then you have council.
Yes.
How is that, like, balancing all of that? That must be crazy.
It's a lot of fun. The nice thing is I have a great support network at home.
Yeah.
Jessica's been absolutely amazing. So, I try to involve her as much as I can in some of the events and trips and stuff that we get to go on. It doesn't always work out.
Right.
But I also coach lacrosse as well, and I've been doing that each year. So this year I'm assistant coach on a team in Port Moody as well. So it's been a whirlwind, but it's been a ton of fun, and it's something I really enjoy doing.
I guess you have to be very organized.
Yes, you do.
Is that the good word?
That's the right word. I think.
That's the right word. Great. So we are going to jump into some civic questions, if you don't mind, and just sort of wanted to ask you about, what's your vision for the growth of Port Moody, and how do you see development aligning with community values?
That's interesting. We have been challenged. I expected when I came on council that we were going to be working on an OCP, getting a whole bunch of community engagement about these different areas, and within the first little bit of being on council, the provincial government passes their bills that are specifically related to high density housing around SkyTrains.
Right.
So that kind of threw that whole process for a bit of a curveball, and our staff, which weren't, of course, ready for that type of change to happen. So OCP got put on pause until we could navigate those rules and regulations around the bills. And I'm excited that we're going to be restarting up our OCP talk pretty soon. But it is going to be a balancing act. The province has put on significant density in areas that we had never even considered putting that level of density, and balancing park space, green space, recreation, et cetera, with that is sometimes difficult when there aren't full details yet available on how we're going to be able to protect some of those areas.
So yes, the province did put some mandates on Port Moody. It was one of the cities that needed to have more growth. And where are you guys at in terms of like meeting those mandates? Are you halfway there? Are you there? Are you not there? Are you behind? Can you speak about that?
Well, I can just say that just because we approve a housing development or an application does not necessarily mean it gets built. And there's a lot of information going around saying, oh, we've approved all these units. But for example, there's a development in the west side of Port Moody that has a whole bunch of units that may or may not ever be built.
Right.
So to be able to count those as deliverable items is difficult to do when approving one thing is one thing, and then actually having it built and occupied is a completely different thing. So,
like a lot of our the people that watch our program, they may not know the ins and outs of council and things like that. So, just because you approve a building doesn't mean that building will get built.
Correct.
Okay, because there's a lot of stuff in between the approval and the building part. Like the developer could pull out and then it doesn't get built, right? Or there could be some other things in between and then it doesn't get built. So is that sort of what you mean? There's things that are really not in your control, perhaps?
Yeah, we can fast track if we believe it's a great fit for the community as much as possible, and staff can work as hard as they can on that. But if the market conditions aren't there, if the cost to build isn't there, if the carrying costs for financing that aren't there, or if there's delays that are either caused through city process, which would have happened in the previous council and almost compromised one of the larger projects, or other factors that prevent that from being able to move forward. There was one that actually got sold or is for sale right now as well that was previously approved. So we can't control that aspect of it. We can do our best to plan and to make sure that it's financially feasible.
Right.
There's only so much money in developments to go around, and there's a lot of risk naturally, and the city isn't taking on that risk.
Right.
It's the people that are building those communities that are doing it. So making sure we have smart projects that can actually deliver, I think, is a key component that often gets missed, as opposed to just approving things to be built.
Right. So talking about things being built, let's talk about affordability. I mean, Canada is one of the largest countries that it's so expensive everywhere, never mind now BC, and then we're going to just whittle it down to Port Moody. There's a lot of current housing policies, and how can we make housing more affordable and accessible to Port Moody? So that might, fall into some of the developments, and if they're adding market rents or things like that. So can you speak about that a little bit?
Well, Port Moody has a pretty aggressive policy, in my opinion at least, almost a leader when it comes to affordable unit requirements in new developments, especially when they're the larger size. Now, whether that's highly subsidized housing, like shelter rate housing, or we're talking about below market rents, it's really hard to define, however, affordability. Because I truly believe that affordability isn't just the cost of the rent of the spot that you're in. It's also the ability to live the lifestyle that allows you to cut expenses as well.
Right.
So if you're able to reduce one extra vehicle or reduce a vehicle entirely, that can be $1,000 a month in income or extra spending that you have available to be able to put towards other things. That's a lot of money to be able to help with affordability as a concept of everything as a part of living, as opposed to just the housing component of it.
Right.
And so the more we can create complete communities that provide walkable amenities nearby where that second vehicle may not be needed,
Right.
Or to increase the amount of time you can spend with family, so you're not always spending all that time commuting, etc. They all have values, and you can put your time to something else if you're not always spending it traveling and commuting. So
you think the city's doing enough when it comes to affordability? Like you said, you have an aggressive plan. You're one of the leaders when it comes to affordability. Are you working with different groups, like in terms of when developers come to the city, there are certain mandates. I remember in the past, it's, what are you doing for the city of the arts? So you want to build here? That's great. What's your art project going to be if this is going to be here, right? So is there something where developers need to have an affordability component in their developments in order for that to get passed or approved at council?
Every development application is a negotiation. As much as we can have it as a part of policy,
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean that it always gets incorporated. It depends what else it's being delivered
Right.
at the same time.
Okay.
So Moody Center, for example, we desperately need a grocery store in that area.
Yes, you do.
So that is
I live there.
so that is a way of getting people out of vehicles, maybe making it more walkable, et cetera, so you're not driving all the way across the city to be able to get groceries during rush hour.
I agree.
So what are being delivered? What are the community needs at that moment? And how can that be best formulated with that development to be able to provide? It can't just always be about one thing, because delivering on affordable housing, as much as I would love it to all be affordable and to be able to do that, it has to make sense financially for it to get built. But we also have to make sure that we're prioritizing what's the most important for the community at that time.
Right. Okay. Okay. Good to know. How do you ensure the voices of all residents are heard in council decisions?
I can tell you every resident's input is heard.
Okay.
There's no doubt. I read every single correspondence that come in when somebody speaks at public input. We are actively listening to what they're saying. It's not about not being heard. Being heard doesn't mean that you're always getting agreed with. And I think that that's a key thing to remember, is that just because you have a different perspective or a different direction, or there's other decisions that are being made that may not align perfectly with what you believe, that doesn't mean that you're not being heard at the table and your opinion being considered as part of the input. Right. You can have very, very vocal people on individual subjects, and it may or may not align with our strategic goals and what we're trying to achieve. And I know that the majority of council has been very clear from election time all the way through on what they were trying to achieve. And I believe that they have committed to delivering on those promises, as much as there's always going to be somebody in the community against one thing or another, whether it's this council or 10 councils past.
You can't really make everyone happy at the end of the day, right?
Correct. We strive to. We strive to represent every single resident, and that's what we should be doing, representing everybody in the community, but you can't always make everybody happy, and we hope that the decisions that we're making now will be ones that they're going to be happy with when they're all done.
So some would say, out in the community, from what I hear from residents, around Port Moody itself, that we're growing too fast, and what are we going to do with St. John Street? It's like a freeway. It's at a standstill. That's a transportation question. But then also, like, what about our community services? Like, I was in the library this weekend at Inlet there, and it was just bumping. It's bumping. You've got the farmers market going on. You've got the rec center happening there. There's not parking. People are getting into accidents. Like, what is happening? Like, it was very busy. Like, are there plans to grow and enhance community programs like the recreational facilities in Port Moody?
So first of all, credit to our facilities as well as the farmers market for being so popular and so busy.
Yes.
It means that we are providing a great service that people are enjoying, and credit to staff on being able to deliver on that. Growth is going to, we need funds to be able to expand facilities, to add extras, to build new libraries or larger spaces for people to do something with Kyle Center. We need funding to be able to do that, and it can't always be on the backs of our residents. So it's going to become a very interesting period going forward here, especially with those provincial mandates on how we're going to be able to get those funds from those densities. We used to be able to get density bonusing on anything above 6 stories, and now they have these zones that don't allow us to collect density bonusing on 8-story and 12-story and even 20-story buildings, where we used to be able to collect that money. That's millions upon millions of dollars in community funds that could be used towards paying for those extra things. Right. But also take into account what Coquitlam's doing right on the border of us, right? Coronation Park on their side is 9 towers, up to 50 stories tall. That's a lot of people, and they have a 1-acre park to be able to service all those people. Where are they going to go? They're going to be wanting to come to Port Moody. It's beautiful. Who wouldn't want to, right? But we also have to make sure that we're providing for our residents, but we're getting 0 tax dollars and 0 benefit from financially being able to supply the needs for those people right on the border that may choose to come our way as opposed to towards Coquitlam. So it's still a process. We're still trying to learn and figure out what the province is going to do to help us. We're advocating strongly. I'm advocating strongly towards as much funding as possible, because we're going to need it to be able to meet what they want us to do on top of our own current community needs.
Right. So there's no plan for a new library or a new rec center or anything like that right now?
Nothing right now.
Not right now?
No.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't had any discussion.
I think you'd be aware by now. You definitely would know. You seem like you're I think there's different levels of city councillors. I feel that you're a very engaged one.
Thank you.
Like that, your paperwork comes, you read it thoroughly as best as you can, you're managing all the other things. I don't know what other councillors do, and I'm not just talking about Port Moody, I'm talking about just all councillors in general. Some flip through and skim and think they know a lot of, okay, yeah, I've done the basic, but I just feel that you would be a little more ingrained into what the different types of communication and correspondence that you are getting from staff, that you would make a point of reading it thoroughly. I would like to feel that way anyways. You give me that vibe, so I'm a Port Moody resident, a little on the buy side, but at the end of the day, it's all good. Businesses, businesses. Is Port Moody doing anything to help local businesses and what's going to be happening in this economy? Like, I feel that a lot of these things are not really in your hands. They're going to be provincial and federal issues as well. But I'm just saying, local business is the fabric of our existence here. And if we're not shopping local, then where are we shopping? Are we filling the big boxes? What do you think or what is Port Moody doing to help local businesses?
So it's difficult because we are regulated not to be able to promote individual businesses as city councillors or as a city. There is laws against us doing that. That being said, we can do things to try to help in areas that might have a little bit of insecurity about what's going to happen with the future. So one of the things that was really important was to have some clarity around the TOD, right, for those businesses so they knew what was going to be happening so they could plan accordingly. But also providing the ability to connect the property owners with some of those businesses as well to say, hey, down the road, something's going to be happening here. Are we able to get you into this space so we can retain those businesses as well? And that's something that our manager of economic services, Joji, would be able to assist with and help try to connect. But we want to make sure we're supporting local, of course, as well. You know, saving $3 on a bag of cat food is not worth ordering online for. Get down there, support that local business. They provide jobs for our young people in our community, and the more we can keep those dollars in our community, the more it gets reinvested into our community. And there's been tons of information shared about that, especially at our Golden Spike Awards.
Yes, with the Tri-Local group
Correct.
and everything. Yes, absolutely. Recently, I had a longtime Port Moody volunteer in the studio, Wilhelmina Martin, and I talked to her a little bit about traffic and what she feels is going on in Port Moody. And I'd like to know your opinion on improving traffic flow and public transportation in the city.
So I was chair of the transportation committee for the first year and a half or so of being on council, and it was fantastic. We have amazing staff. They look at every angle they can, and we realize the constraints geographically that Port Moody has with moving traffic through the city. There's also a safety side of it as well. It's not all about just prioritizing traffic flow. We want to be able to make sure people can move about by alternative modes besides vehicles safely as well. So one of the big projects that we had worked on that I hope has contributed to some safety as well as some improvements is the Dudney Trunk intersection has been upgraded with the left-hand turns. It's now got, I know the delineators, people don't like the delineators, but it's temporary for right now. But it's got delineators that are preventing that last second lane switches where people trying to run down the side to be able to get onto Ioko. And it allows that traffic from Dudney to be able to come across without blocking the middle lanes and creating hazards. So that's one thing that has been done in the last year and a half that I was very happy that my committee helped me along with and helped staff along with. But we're always going to be faced with traffic. My commute daily is to New Westminster. There's a 3-minute difference in drive time between me taking from City Hall, going down Lougheed Highway through Coquitlam, or taking St. John Street up North Road. The GPS is going to take me what it thinks is the fastest way. Every day I'm choosing Coquitlam. Why? There's 3 lights, maybe 4 lights to get there, as opposed to 20 or 30 lights to get there and driving and adding to that extra Port Moody congestion. So it's going to take a change of thinking in the routes that we choose to do, but that's going to naturally happen as more buildings to the east of us and development to the east of us occurs and more cars get on the roads. Unless they feel like they're inconvenienced going one direction, they're not going to change their habits. But Port Moody isn't burdened with traffic all day long. We do have our rush hour periods, absolutely. And you know, if you're part of that traffic, you're part of that congestion, right? So the more we can try to eliminate those second and third trips that you might need to do after you get home, where you're like, oh, I gotta go get some onions or potatoes or whatever it is, and now you're getting in your car and you're traveling across the city to pick those up and come back. If we can provide those community hubs, those grocery and essential items close by, you might be able to avoid getting in the vehicle and therefore reduce our own impact on that traffic.
Yeah, I agree. It is at certain times of day. We're not gridlocked 24/7. No, definitely. Of course, in that moment of that gridlock, it's like we need to do something about it. But then it dissipates, and it's just you're back to
and
regular.
Construction can have influences on it.
Yeah,
and
up Snake Hill and into the Coquitlam side, absolutely. Correct. Yeah, are there any upcoming projects focused on enhancing walkability, bike friendliness in Port Moody?
So there was there's two things that I can highlight without taking a whole bunch of time, of course.
Yeah.
One thing is the St. John's multi-use pathway is now being talked about between Moody Street all the way over to Ioko. So that's the second phase of the project. That's currently being talked about at the Transportation Committee. So that'll be exciting because that'll be extending along that area, making it more walkable going forward. And then the other one that came to council that kind of got sent back to staff was the bidirectional bike lane to connect on to Guildford along Murray Street between the Coquitlam border, to see if there's a way that we can connect into that to create a contiguous safe passage for bikes and cyclists, and of course the e-scooter and e-bike program that was just recently approved by council for us to look into a provider for that. So we'll be looking at that option. So maybe that'll get some people out of cars that want to get up to the SkyTrain or down to the breweries.
Is it like the program, you know, when we saw all of the scooters out for the Coquitlam side of things, like Port Moody is going to implement this?
Yes, but we're taking a lot of the lessons that were learned in Coquitlam and applying those.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. It's actually a really good council meeting to watch, but we're not going to have the ability to drop them anywhere. There's going to be designated parking areas only.
It looks so messy and everything. They're just throwing them here and there, and we don't want that.
And they can block accessibility, and we want to make sure that they're not going to be littered, they're not going to end up in ravines or anything like that. So, but that's still to come.
So is Port Moody taking steps, you know, towards sustainability and environmental conservation?
Well, so as far as getting out of vehicles, you know, reducing GHG emissions and stuff like that, absolutely. That's one initiative right there. We're also making changes as they come up to try to reduce greenhouse gas emissions within the city. We do have quite a strong, I would say, climate action plan as a city.
Good.
It is quite a lot of money being devoted to it, and we have to balance, you know, tax dollars, et cetera, with being able to provide on that, at least in my opinion. But I believe we are taking the steps necessary to try to also increase green canopy in the Moody Centre area. As much as people may say, yeah, you're building concrete towers and stuff like that and approving those, there's also no trees in that TOD area of any significance. So we're adding greenery to that area as well. So we're trying to expand at the same time. How
can the city encourage a more eco-friendly practice among businesses and residents?
More eco-friendly. Well, that's interesting because we don't control what a business does, but one of the things like we've already talked about is the e-scooter. So that's instead of driving to the breweries in the evening time, you know, why don't you take these e-scooters? Why don't you take these e-bikes that are going to be available soon? With the expanded bike lanes, it's easier to be able to take your own bike or your own e-scooter around. And now that we've signed on to that program, I think that's great. We're always big on recycling as well, but you know, any opportunities that anybody wants to bring up to me of ways that we can help promote more environmental friendly practices in the city, I'm always all ears on it.
So Rocky Point's been like a contentious kind of, you know, landmark and conversation with so many residents with now, you know, you guys have implemented paid parking there for a certain number of hours, et cetera. You know, from what you were telling me before with regards to expansion to our community services, you know, there's nothing in the works for that right now because you need funding and money, et cetera, working with the province and all of that. But what about our green spaces and protecting our existing parks and waterfronts? What's Port Moody doing in that capacity?
Well, we recently have our Rocky Point Master Plan that got approved, as well as the Old Orchard Park Master Plan. So there is a long-term thinking about what we want that space to look like. The other key thing to note is that, you know, expansion of green space, could it be as simple as removing the 40% of the area in Rocky Point that is concrete, which provides parking? Is that a way to go? People like to park, but at the same time, it's taking up so much space that could be used for other things. Any expansion, sizable expansion of Rocky Point Park to the west would be in conjunction with the private landowner to the west, and negotiating in good faith to be able to provide the best that we possibly can for our residents. It's not just a go ahead and do what you'd like. There needs to be a very, very clear expansion on that, especially for the boardwalk and the waterfront. And I think that as part of that expansion, we're going to get what we want, and we're not going to just all of a sudden approve something because we need certain things. We also want that green space, and we also have, of course, the boardwalk project, which is halfway complete right now as well, and that's also very environmental because we have planned for sea level rise with that, so that people aren't actually down into the marsh area or anything like that. We've actually raised up the boardwalk, and it's going to continue all the way along as well, all the way to basically Noons Creek at a raised level, so to keep animals out of there, but also to plan for future sea level rise and environmental factors. Okay,
great. So we talked about a lot of things in just a short amount of time. I promise no more hard questions.
Oh, those were great.
We're going to talk about you now, and we mentioned it a little bit earlier about why you ran and what you feel that you can give back to your community. But I want to ask you, what's been your proudest achievement so far on council?
I would say the cohesive, open communication that has occurred now with this council group. Teamwork and collaboration and kindness was my key messaging that I was trying to get across during the election. And I believe all of us can talk to each other respectfully and be able to debate respectfully, and knowing that we're doing it all for the best intentions. And I think that's a really key thing, because we're getting a lot of work done. Like if you take a look at our strategic plan, our mission is, and what we're getting done, even with the curveballs being thrown by the province, we're delivering on a lot of those promises. And so I would say the fact that we're working so well together to achieve the goals for our residents, I think that's your biggest achievement, that you guys are being kind to each other and you're collaborating and communicating. Because that's like my next question. How do you collaborate with other councillors? You kind of answered the two in one. Oh, well. Yeah, I mean, there isn't a project that you're proud about. There isn't something that you physically yourself was advocating for. I mean, the transportation one that when you were on the transportation committee, that sounds like a big deal. But no one particular thing right now that stands out, because I feel there's still a lot of work to do. There's a lot, and I'm nowhere near close to being done. Yeah. The only other thing I would mention is my Port Moody residents first policy when it comes to recreation. There was a lot of challenges with people getting into swimming lessons or our recreation programs and camps at the preferred times, because there was a lot of competition from the region, because these services are popular and our staff do an incredible job at it. So people want to come to Port Moody to get these things. So the fact that we now have 2 extra days to be able to register, every resident of Port Moody has 2 extra days to register for these programs before they open to everybody else. I think that's a nice thing for our community. That's great. What legacy do you hope to leave Port Moody? It's too early at all to be talking about legacies. I just hope that our community sees that we are working hard for them, that we have their best intentions at heart, and that the legacy of the future generations that we're providing for, to have your kids or grandkids be able to live in the same community as you, to be able to work in this community and have good jobs and good employment. These are things that will happen 10, 15, 20 years down the road. A lot of the decisions that we're making are decades down the road, but we're making them right now. And change is going to be tough. You're going to see the effects of change with construction. But no different than Newport Village or Cedarbrooke Village becoming so popular and such a wonderful place to be. I think that can be delivered as well with the Moody Centre area, as well as near Inlet Centre, SkyTrain, and Coronation Park. These are the areas that I identified as where I wanted to put density and complete housing options, including employment. And I believe that we're going to be able to deliver on that, and we're going to be able to do smart developments, and also in the future phases provide more affordable housing options as well. That's great. So do you think we're going to see your name on the ballot in 2026? Oh, there's a lot of time left between now and then, but I've enjoyed this. As the best job I've ever had, and I enjoy every day of it. So I'm going to take that as a yes. All right. You're watching Tri-Cities Community TV, and we are with Councillor Callan Morrison telling us so many things about Port Moody, and it's a great place to live, work, and play. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Cathy Cena.